Hello and welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Riches. In this election special edition, I'm joined by the candidates for Hull North. They are Mike Ross for the Liberal Democrats, Dehenna Davison for the Conservatives, the incumbent Member of Parliament Diana Johnson for the Labour Party, and Martin Dean for the Greens. And if I may start, Diana, since you're the incumbent, I'll ask you the first question. What have you ever done for Hull North?
Well, I hope in the 10 years that I've been a Member of Parliament for Hull North, I've been a local champion. And I'm very proud of the role I've played in some of the achievements we've seen in the city. For instance, bringing Siemens to the city, a real future investment, jobs, opportunities for our youngsters. Also, City of Culture, I was proud to play a part in that for 2017. I think also, I think it's important that an area like Hull North, you know, we've been very badly hit by the cuts under the coalition government, and I've certainly made it my job over the last 5 years to be standing up in Parliament and asking questions about why Hull has been so badly affected by the cuts. You know, families in Hull £1,600 worse off by 2015, cuts to the council budget, nearly £300 per person. So, you know, really bad cuts to this city.
Before we go on to the larger economic policy, just staying a little bit more local for the moment, Dehenna, you want to replace Diana. What's she been doing wrong?
Well, firstly, I think on this particular message, on selling the cuts, it's kind of such a really negative message to be selling to our constituents. In reality, in some ways, Hull is having an absolutely incredible time under this government. Admittedly, you know, the council tax precept, yes, that has made some reductions, but at the same time, working people are now over £800 a year better off thanks to the income tax changes. We've seen massive investment in transport in this city that did not come about despite having a Secretary of State for Transport.
Well, we haven't got the rail electrification, have we?
We haven't got it yet, but at least it's progressing, Diana,
specifically
which did not
for Hull
before.
North, Dehenna. Specifically for Hull North, what would you do that has yet to be done?
Well, again, it's just about being a local champion, listening to the needs of constituents. And one of the key campaigns that I've been working on recently is with regards to internet provision in Hull. As we know, KC is the one company in Hull that really does provide internet, but there are a lot of their customers who really are unhappy and very dissatisfied with the provision. So what I've done, I've been in touch with key ministers at the Department of Community, DCMS, Community, Media and Sport, Culture, Media and Sport, there we go, with Ed Vaizey to talk about KC and in particular what can be done to encourage more companies to invest in Hull so that we can bring prices down and ensure people are getting the service they're paying for.
Mike, what about the Greens? Martin, I beg your pardon. What about the Greens? What do you offer?
I could try answering for the Greens
Well,
if you want, but
I do beg your pardon, Martin. I think you better speak for the Greens.
Yeah, well, the Green Party stands for a number of other things to really give people a wider choice this election. So, for example, top of our list would be NHS and protecting the NHS against what this government plans and what indeed the previous government was doing with the NHS too. We want to see it definitely protected, kept public, and for an end to competition in the NHS. And as part of our renationalisation agenda, these are very popular policies across the country and including the constituency, and we offer choices for people on that, such as rail renationalisation, such as bringing energy back into the renationalised fold as well. We want to see particularly an end to fuel poverty and to food banks and for a much more equal society rather than...
Well, everybody wants to see an end to poverty. What would you do to do it?
Well, you might say that, but you'd be wrong.
Who doesn't want to see an end to poverty?
Well, look at the policies that we're having forced upon us, like, say, the bedroom tax. On the day that the bedroom tax came in, which is...
Dehenna came in on that.
Well, of course she can, I'm sure she will. The same day as the bedroom tax came in, which is a penalty, an extra penalty, that people on the lowest rung of the accommodation ladder had to pay, the same day a tax break came in for millionaires worth £40,000 a year. That's the sort of discrimination economically that we're seeing from this government.
Well, my question very specifically about Hull North seems to have become very universal very quickly. But Mike, Mike, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say it's a track record. I've been on the council now representing local people and a part of Hull North for 13 years. I think if you speak to many residents out there, as I do on a regular basis, they're clear that they see a good level of service from me as their local councillor, getting out and rolling my sleeves up, prepared to get my hands dirty quite literally sometimes with some of the things that we've been involved in over the last few years. I remember when it was time of the floods, being part of a team of councillors, putting sandbags together and actually real sort of face of helping local people on the ground. And I think there's that sort of work that, if your first question, what have I done for the people of Hull North, is around working alongside local people, supporting their efforts, supporting their campaigns.
Well, what is it specifically about the Liberal Democrats that benefits the people of Hull North?
And that's a different question. In terms of the Liberal Democrat approach, well, I think twofold. I mean, what we offer for local people, we are people who want to see things done fairly. We want to see the economy in this city grow. I think it's fair to say that we want to see more jobs here. And I think if you look at the track record of the Liberal Democrat administration, we were there when Siemens decided to invest in Hull, playing the key critical part in those discussions at the time. We want to see a city where people are open to investing here. And actually, that's around relationship. That's about personality. That's about people being prepared to deal with the city. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. If you look at the current administration, people have been turned off and turned away from the city because of the people who are there now. So it's about having open doors and being open to have people come and invest in this city.
Well, Diana, so your lot are in power in Hull at the moment.
Yes, and I'm very proud to say that under a Labour administration, with Labour MPs and other MPs from the area as well, you know, we brought Siemens to this city, and we got City of Culture 2017 with a Labour administration. So I think this idea that people are being turned away from the city because there's a Labour administration is absolute poppycock. And what I'd also say is that it's only a Labour administration in this city that's actually made the investment and worked with businesses to make sure that we have a local enterprise partnership that is really motoring now under Lord Haskins as the chair, because when the Liberal Democrats were in power, they wanted us just to have a LEP with Scarborough and just to focus in on tourism and selling, you know, sticks of rock and candy floss, whereas we want a new industry for this city. We want renewables to become a centre of excellence in the city. We've got the digital work that's going on as well. So we think there's real potential in this city for investment. That's under a Labour administration and 3 local Labour
Sorry,
MPs.
if I may say, I think Diana perhaps spends a little bit too much time in Westminster if she thinks we only wanted with Scarborough.
Well, it's her job.
Well, the job is being a Westminster Member of Parliament,
and I think what the truth was, it was around having a North Bank LEP, which I think, let's face it, most people here, both in the business sector and others, recognise that actually the real business drive in the city is very much a North Bank one, and that's what we were after doing.
Well, perhaps I'll let you into a secret, Mike, that we actually had to go and see coalition ministers to basically get the LEP underway, and it was recognised by anyone with any brain that we needed a North and South Bank LEP coming together, because the future is around the Humber, both the North and the South Bank. It's not about having a tourism LEP up with...
Diana, can I just take you back to the point you made earlier on? You said that the Labour administration here had brought in Siemens. Would Siemens not have come here under any other political circumstances?
What I'll say to Mike is that actually Siemens were looking to come to this city for quite a few years. But I think Gordon Brown was actually the Prime Minister at the time when the first advances were being made to come to Hull. So it's been over a number of years. But what I would say is that I think it's been the consistency of members of Parliament, the local council and businesses coming together and really making Hull an attractive place to build on, as you say, the absolutely right natural resources of the North Sea, the wind, our ideal location in terms of becoming a renewables hub for the offshore industry.
If I may say, this has been the problem we've had for the last 4 years or 5 years from Diana Johnson MP here. Anything good, Siemens must have been Labour Council doing it. Anything bad,
no, I've just said
cuts.
it started before that.
Yes, indeed.
Mike. I've just paid tribute to
when
that.
there was a Liberal Democrat council, now I'm not saying it was all because of the Liberal Democrat council. There's
Well,
plenty of credit to go around. But when anybody suggests that it's more than just Labour councillors or Labour politicians that had any role to play with it, they are shouted down by certain key figures.
And the fact that, you know, an economic recovery has meant businesses are more willing to invest. Well, of course, they're more willing to invest in Hull.
You would say that the economic recovery has reached Hull?
I would say so, to an extent, of course. If businesses are willing to invest here, then they're obviously much more confident that the economy is growing.
There's no more for you to do here, is it? The green dream has come true.
We can always pack up and go home, can't we? We've got a lot to do. The renewable energy coming to the city is to be welcomed, and it's a great boon for the area, for Yorkshire, for the country as a whole. Helps push up our percentage in renewable commitment for our targets for Europe and so on. There's other things, though, that we could do with energy. For example, in Kirklees, which is the Huddersfield area, there's a scheme there being led by the Greens, which is putting solar panels on 2,000 council homes. I'd like to see that happen in Hull, and yet it's just not on anybody's agenda at the moment. And what that does is it means free energy for the tenants, which is amazing. And we're talking social housing here, so it's money that they don't have to pay on bills to normally the big 6 energy suppliers. That means a boost to the local economy for the sort of 240 quid or so per year per family, which goes back into the local economy. So you've got multiple wins there, an end to fuel poverty in the area and so on.
And how would you fund it?
It's funded from ring-fenced housing money. Our particular lead councillor there, Andrew Cooper, has got this.
Is that money for ring-fenced houses?
If I can help Martin out, it is though. I mean, perhaps not in the scale it's happening in Kirklees, but if you look around the councils in Hull, you will see solar panels on the roofs.
Oh, great. I look forward to a lot more.
One of the things that there's clearly a consensus about is that everybody would like to see more environmentally friendly policies, partly because it's cheaper than pulling things out of the ground, and partly because it's
not quite
cleaner.
everybody. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the drive from government to frack 2/3 of the country.
Well, let me...
It's much more important for residents to be able to afford their energy bills than necessarily to say that they're using green energy. I'd much rather see someone have money in their pocket and food on their tables and say, oh, look at me, I have a solar panel, it's fantastic.
Well, if that solar panel means that you have the energy anyway...
Yeah, but if you're having to pay for it over several years... and
they don't have to pay for it.
Well, the point is, Martin, that one way or another everybody will have to pay for it, because the Green Party's agenda, I know the manifesto isn't published at time of recording, but the Green Party's agenda is one of a far higher taxation and role of the state in managing not just energy, but everybody's lives, infrastructure
It's
as well,
higher taxation for the higher earners and for corporations, yeah. Most people, vast majority of people will be better off. Create a fairer society, of course.
Martin, so sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. Please join us after the break when I'll still be talking to the candidates for Hull North. Welcome back to Hot Topics. I'm joined by the parliamentary candidates for the constituency of Hull North. Deanna, for the Conservative Party, I just want to ask you about austerity. Your party wants to cut the debt and the deficit. The other parties don't want to be quite as extreme if they get the chance next election. Your policy really hurts.
I think it hurts in the same way of ripping off a sticking plaster. It's much better to get sort of the nasty part out of the way now to ensure that our long-term public finances are in really good order. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a strong economy, it is impossible to have strong and really good public services that our nation desperately needs.
But you can have a stronger strong economy with the debt still there, can't you? As long as you're paying down the deficit.
Well, arguably so, but you saw business confidence falling in the UK as a result of the national debt, and we saw what happened in Greece. It was absolutely disastrous, and I'm not saying we were at that level, but to continue with the debt rising would be absolutely disastrous.
But we've had a debt of one sort or another for hundreds of years. I mean, that's how we have a credit economy.
We have had some level of debt, but never to the level that it was when we inherited it in 2010.
For the Liberal Democrats, Mike, why don't you want to cut off the debt if it takes the burden off our grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Oh, well, obviously, the Liberal Democrats want to make sure that the country's finances are in good order, but it's also fair to say that the Conservatives would do it in quite a harsh approach. Labour seek to borrow and spend their way out as they've done before, which has frankly got us in the situation where we found ourselves when the coalition was formed. It's around doing it in a way that is fair to everyone. What I would say is that while there has been austerity measures over the last 4 years, there's a danger of overplaying just how deep the impacts have been, and certain opposition parties have sought to do that. If you look around, while yes, there have been some hardship for some, there has also been signs of real growth over the last few years, and that is a good thing. Even if I can put it in the context of, say, the council and the amount of funding the council gets, from my own point of reference, actually, the council still has a tremendous amount of money at its disposal that it can still spend on vital services in the city, and does do so. And it's very much, the important thing is always about not necessarily how much you have, but how you spend it that's important.
It sounds as if you're a great supporter of this Conservative-led administration.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I think I recognise what it sought out to do when it was formed back in 2010. I don't necessarily agree with everything it's done over that time, as I'm sure Diana, as a Labour MP, didn't agree with everything the Labour government did in their time. But what it sought to do was understandable given the context of the state that it inherited.
Diana.
Well, can I just put this into context? Because we actually had a worldwide economic crisis. It wasn't about the Labour Party, Labour government spending money on nurses or teachers or building new hospitals. It was about the banks. It was about what happened on the subprime mortgages in the US. So I think we need to get that straight. Secondly, I think it's important to recognise that there's been extreme austerity in this city, and that this city has not had a fair deal under the coalition Lib Dems and Tories. We are the 10th most deprived area in the country, and we are seeing the most severe cuts to local government finance. And it beggars belief, Mike, to say as a local councillor that you are not prepared to stand up to your Lib Dem ministers and argue the case for Hull and for getting a fair share of funding. We all recognise there has to be cuts, and austerity unfortunately is here, but we have to do it in a fair way, and your government certainly has not done that for this city.
Diana, so I don't think at any point did I say I didn't do that. I don't think at any point you can say
You've
that.
said it doesn't matter how much money you get, it's what you do with it. Well, actually it does matter how much money you get if you're going to look after the elderly, the sick, and you know, provide decent services in this city.
Well, which is why we're getting more people into work in order to pay their taxes and raise the public revenue.
And of course we all want people to be in work. You know, that's an aspiration of all of us around this table, to have more people in work. The problem is, if you go back to Siemens, those 14 jobs that were advertised recently at Siemens, there were 1,000 applicants in this city for those 14 jobs. It's hard in this city to get work, and I think all candidates need to be talking to actual people on the doorstep to find out how hard it is for people to get jobs and to make ends meet. It's really tough.
Well, I can guarantee to you, Diana, I think myself and Mike have definitely been out on the doorsteps. Martin, I can't speak for you.
Well, I'm surprised at what you're saying, if that's the case.
Martin, I promised you before the break that we come back to the green economic policies. You make the Labour Party look terribly right-wing.
We do, and we're proud to. The Green Party...
The Labour Party
I
look
don't
terribly right-wing. They do a
think
good
so.
job themselves.
The Green Party rejects austerity, so we're not prepared to drink the Westminster Kool-Aid that the other candidates here are. Just picking up on what Diana said about Greece, you're wrong. The people are rejecting austerity there, that's what was going on there. And the people want to reject austerity in Britain, I say. And even in Hull North, we've got 29% of people already registering as Green Party policy supporters, wherever their vote may go in a few months' time. And they know we reject austerity. They know we're going to tax where the huge wealth is in this country, in the 6th richest country in the world. And austerity is nothing more than a robbery of the public purse, with the hundreds of thousands of public sector jobs being...
May I just... Greece borrowed 240 billion euros worth from the other countries of the European Union, and then had an election by which they democratically decided not to pay back their debt. Would your suggestion be that the way of escaping authority is simply to say, don't pay your debts, let's start again, flatline it?
Well, this is nothing new in the international realm. There's such a thing.
Well, is it? Yes, it still doesn't sound great to me. It seems rather dishonest. Is it new or not?
Depends where the debt comes from. Greece has its own problems, which involves the previous Prime Minister and some very big international financial firms. In Britain, what we did with austerity was give somewhere in excess of £1 trillion to a variety of banks at the same crisis that Diana mentioned earlier. And now we're being made to pay as a country. We reject those premises. We want to break up the banks to commercial banking, away from the speculative banking, or it's going to happen again, as already top financial analysts are warning people it's going to happen. So what happens again? Eternal austerity. George Orwell's boot coming down on the human head. Is that what we're going to see? We're going to see more job losses.
That was a satire on a statist communist system rather than on a capitalist system. 1984 you're quoting there, the last line.
The point
I'm just not sure that you can take George Orwell's name in vain.
You would agree that more and more people are having to use food banks than ever before. You would agree that there's more homelessness, and it's rising, and it's rising amongst youth as well. So those are major indicators of rising poverty in Britain, in the 6th richest country of the world, which is still getting richer and still making a lot of very rich people even richer. We can tap that wealth if there is the political will.
We've touched on the situation in Greece, and so I think we should probably talk about the European Union. Diana, I think your party is the only one that's absolutely unequivocally against the idea of having a referendum about whether or not to leave Europe. Is that not a dangerous position for the Labour Party, especially here, where UKIP, who I'd be a little devil's advocate because UKIP haven't been able to send a representative, where the idea of withdrawal from the European Union is so popular?
Well, I think first of all it's important to stress that what Labour said is that we would have a referendum if there was a transfer of more powers to Europe. So that's our, it's not that we've ruled it out completely, that's the first thing. Secondly, representing a city like Hull, which trades day in, day out with Europe, I recognise how important it is for us to be part of the EU. Now, of course, I want to see reform of the EU. I don't think it's perfect by any means. It's important we have reform. But I certainly think having, as the Conservatives want to do, having 2 or 3 years of a campaign around whether we stay in or come out, or as UKIP say, just to come out, is incredibly destabilising for this country, for business and for jobs. And I think it would be absolutely the wrong thing to do if we are starting to see some improvement in the economy, to find ourselves debating whether we're in or out for the next few years. That seems to me absolutely wrong. And the business community will tell you it does not help them invest long term in this country if there's a view that we might be out of the EU. The largest trading bloc in the world. Why would we want to come out of that?
Yeah, but you're now making incredibly scaremongering assumptions that if we were to pull out of the European Union as a full member state, that no one would allow us to trade with the European Union, which is an absolutely ridiculous assumption.
But why would they give us preferential treatment? We would not be able to have the treatment we have now. We would be treated in a very different way. We wouldn't have access to those markets in the way we do now.
Can you guarantee that?
But you can't guarantee that we won't.
But given that we are one of the EU's biggest trading blocs, it would not be beneficial for the EU to stop trading with us either, Diana.
But we don't know. That's the problem. We don't know. And for business,
there's no point scaremongering on your side that businesses are going to instantly pull out of investing in the UK.
You need to talk to businesses in Hull. They'll tell you that.
Yes, so I haven't been.
Deanna, I mean, we'll make the point that your party is torn between those, probably a smaller number who want to stay in the EU and quite a large number, not including your leader, who would like to withdraw from the EU. And your promise is that if you get a majority government, there'll be a referendum in 2017. If one votes Conservative, if you're against the EU, why wouldn't you vote UKIP? And if you're for the EU, where else can you vote where your vote doesn't risk causing a referendum?
Well, I guess the point is we're actually giving the public a choice. The public haven't had a say on the European Union since 1975, and they certainly haven't had a say on the current agreement that we have with the European Union. Sorry, Mike.
Well, can I just pick up on this point around the public not having a choice? I found this very interesting line. Indications are that actually the group of people who are most likely to say come out of Europe are the people who actually had that vote back in the 1970s, and the group of people most likely to want to stay are younger people who didn't have the vote back in those days. And so I think actually this argument around giving people a vote, yeah, I'm all for democracy, completely. However, I think actually what's clear from any polling, if you go by polling, is that the people who are most keen to stay are the younger generations who see the benefits of being in EU. And just a bit of a credit to Nick Clegg. I know he's had his detractors over the last few years, but he was the one of the main leaders to take on UKIP and Nigel Farage over the argument over Europe.
I'll have to stop you, Mike, and just to get one very quick point to Martin from the Greens about the European Union, just very briefly.
Yeah, we favour a referendum. Our platform last year was to do that and for reform in the way that we want.
Martin, thank you very much. I have to stop there. I'm so sorry, that's all we have time for. My thanks to Mike Cross, Deanna Davison, Diana Johnson and Martin Dean. Please join me for another Hot Topic election special in a few days' time. For now, goodbye.